Now the first thing that we want to do is tape down our paper or stretch our paper. We're not actually stretching it. I guess that term comes from when you stretch a canvas. I'm not really sure. The way that we want to tape down our paper is we want it to be nice and even on all edges. So the way I do that is I pull the tape past the paper and then I press it down and I go down slowly so that I can see where it's at, and I wait until where I can see how far I need to go, and then I press it down. Now, if I was going to paint a piece, I would just stop right here, but we're gonna be doing some watercolor techniques where we're gonna try out a bunch of different techniques. So what we're going to do is we're gonna take a ruler and we're gonna break this up into 3 different sections. I can see that this is about 30 centimeters. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make a line right here on the tape at the 10 centimeters and at the 20 centimeters, breaking this up into 3 different sections. I'm going to do the same down here, getting it kind of even at the 10 and at the 20. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape and I'm going to put it across the paper like this. Press it down nice and neat. Make sure it's nice and straight. The same here. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to break it up into 3 sections. So I can see that this other side is, let's see, 22.5 or 23 centimeters. So basically 7.5 centimeters. So I'm going to do 7.5, and then I'm going to come down and do 7.5 again. Do the same thing over here. 7.5. 7.5. Doesn't have to be perfect. Then I'm going to take my tape and stretch it across. Trying to make sure that's nice and straight. There we go, just like that. Now with watercolor, you of course need water. Now I'm going to take my paint palette. I'm going to have a dirty water cup and a clean water cup at each table. The first technique that I want to show you is called wet on wet. So I'll write that down, you don't have to. I'm going to take clean water and I'm just going to brush across clean water across this whole section here. And I'm going to kind of brush it off so there's not any puddles, but it's nice and wet everywhere. Okay, while that kind of soaks in, I'm going to do a wet on dry. And what that means is I'm going to take wet paint, I'm going to put it on dry paper. So my paintbrush is wet, but the paper isn't. So if your paints aren't already wet, what we need to do is we need to take some water and squeeze it into each palette. So I'm just dipping my paintbrush in the water, squeeze it into each little cake of paint. Like so. Now mine are already kind of wet because I already prepped this. What I'm going to do now is I want to show you one cool trick, and that is to take half of your paintbrush and just dip one corner in one color, and then you can dip the other corner in a different color. So I'll have blue on one side, pink on the other. And if I do wet on dry, you can see what that looks like. I'm just going to kind of smooth that out. And then let's go ahead and I'm going to flip my paintbrush and do it like this here. If you want to choose a different color, you can do that. Maybe try orange and yellow. Now, if I get a little bit of a mess right here, you can take a paper towel and just kind of clean that up. I'm going to have mine kind of meet right there. I don't want any puddles with my wet on dry. Then I'm going to do the same thing on my wet on wet, and you'll see how that's kind of different. So I want to wash it off in the dirty water, then wash it off in the clean water, and we're going to do the same thing. So this time I'm going to take the blue and the pink again so that you can kind of see that. Work on the wet on wet. Then we can do a salt treatment. So you can take kosher salt like this, and I'll put that right there. Or you can use regular old table salt that you use in your food, and we can put that right there. Or you could even take some rice, just regular old rice. So we'll put that right there. And they all do different things. So let's start with any of them, really. Now, what I don't want is I don't want to put it in any of the puddles of water. If you put it in the puddles of water, it's going to soak up too much water and it's not going to work. But if I put it on wet spots that are still glossy, but this one's probably a little too dry already. I let it get too dry while I was talking. While it's still glossy and wet, but not puddled up, it will soak up some of that water and it'll crystallize, creating really nice little salt crystals. Then wash off your paintbrush in the dirty water, wash it off in the clean water. And this time, let's put plenty of water down here on this side. And this is going to be a wet on wet as well. So I just put clear water. This time we're just going to go straight in with our paint. We have it nice and wet, but we're just going to touch the tops of the paint or the corner of the paint. You can see how it soaks in. And then you can wash it off in your dirty water, wash it off in your clean water, and you can do the same thing on the other side. And you can kind of see how they blend together in a second. It's too wet right now to do any salt, so I'm gonna wait on that, but I'm gonna come back and put a little salt there. And this time I'm gonna use regular salt and we'll see how that works. One other thing that you can do is you can take clean water, put it down, rip up a paper towel, kind of crumple it up a little bit, get it some wrinkles, press it down. I'm going to take another paper towel, fold it, press it down there, and put it there as well. And then I'm just going to get it nice and wet with just regular water. I want to scrunch it up so that it has some wrinkles in it. Then I'm going to choose a color. It could be any color. Let's go with some greens this time. Start off with light green, and I'm going to get it pretty soaked wet with that green. Oops. Then I'm going to go with a darker green. And the effect that this will give is going to give it wrinkles whenever, and different fades into the paper. Now let's go back and put some salt on that wet on wet. Okay, one other thing you can do is you can take craft tissue paper, not the kind of tissue paper that you pack in your presents, but a craft tissue paper that will bleed. And I'm going to put down wet on wet, so I'm going to put just clear water there. And then I'm going to layer a few of these pieces of tissue paper. And what's going to happen is it's going to bleed colors into that. All right, now let's see what the rice looks like. So let's do wet on wet again. We'll just get the paper wet, choose any color that you want. Choose 2 colors if you'd like. I'm gonna let this one bleed out like that. So I'm gonna load it up nice and heavy down here at the bottom and let it kind of bleed up. Then I'm going to put a few pieces of rice. Now the rice will soak up a lot more water, so you can put it on when it's a little bit more wet. The rice won't crystallize out quite like the salt does, as you can see it's already doing here. I'm going to wash my paintbrush off in the dirty water, wash my paintbrush off in the clean water. Then I'm going to choose a color just for the fun of it. I'm going to choose 2 colors again. This time I want to get my paintbrush kind of dry, and I'm going to do a wet on dry, but my paintbrush is a little bit dry as well. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to barely touch the paper, and then I'm going to flick it up. And you can see how I can get these almost grass-like or streaks of color by just kind of touching the paper and pulling it up. Let me go in with a darker color on top of that. I'm gonna wash it off in the dirty water, wash it off in the clean water. This time let's get some black and some purple. Going to dry it off a little bit and then just flick it up. Wash it off in dirty water, wash it off in the clean water. Okay, let's do another wet on wet. I'm going to get this paper nice and wet. Choose any color you want. I'm going to put it in the corners this time. I'm going to choose a color for each corner that's different. Now I'm going to take one of these scrunchy brown pieces of paper, and I'm just going to press it down onto this wet on wet. And it might be too dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to get it a little bit of wet before I do that. And then I'm going to put it down.